What would you do if the person you loved most revealed a truth that shattered everything you thought you knew? I asked myself that question as I stood frozen on my in-laws' sprawling porch, the hum of a Rolls-Royce engine fading behind me. My husband, Daniel, had just pulled up in a car that screamed wealth, a car I'd never seen before. His smile was wide, his suit crisp, and his confidence unshakable as he stepped out, keys dangling like a trophy. My parents, standing beside me, gasped at the sight. This was the moment Daniel had been planning for weeks, the grand gesture to win over my skeptical family. But as the evening unfolded, I would learn that the car was just the beginning of a secret so profound it would leave us all speechless. We've been married for 3 years, Daniel and I. He was the kind of man who could light up a room with a single grin, the kind who made you believe in dreams you didn't know you had. I met him at a coffee shop in Chicago, where he was sketching buildings on a napkin, his eyes alight with ambition. He told me he was an architect, freelancing for small firms, piecing together a career. I fell for his passion, his drive, his promises of a future we'd build together. My parents, though, were harder to convince. They were old money, rooted in tradition, and they saw Daniel as a dreamer without the means to match their expectations. "He's charming, Emma," my mother would say, her tone sharp, "but charm doesn't pay the bills." This visit to their estate in upstate New York was Daniel's chance to prove them wrong. He'd been secretive for weeks, dodging my questions about his late nights and cryptic phone calls. "Trust me," he'd say, kissing my forehead. "I'm working on something big." I thought maybe he'd landed a major project, something to show my parents he was more than talk. But when he rolled up in that gleaming Rolls-Royce, I felt a mix of awe and unease. Where had this car come from? We lived in a modest apartment, pinching pennies for our future. A car like that cost more than our combined savings. My parents, Evelyn and Richard, stood on the porch, their expressions unreadable. My mother's perfectly manicured hand tightened around her wine glass, and my father's bushy eyebrows lifted. Daniel strode toward us, his charm on full display. "Evelyn, Richard," he said, his voice smooth as velvet, "I want to show you what Emma and I have been building." He gestured to the car, its curves catching the fading sunlight. My mother forced a smile, but her eyes darted to me, searching for answers I didn't have. Dinner was a tense affair. The dining room, with its crystal chandelier and mahogany table, felt like a stage for Daniel's performance. He spoke of new opportunities, of connections he'd made, of a future where we'd never want for anything. My parents listened, their skepticism softening with each polished word. I watched him, my heart swelling with pride but pricked by doubt. He was too perfect, too poised. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As dessert was served lavender creme brulee, my mother's favorite stranger arrived. The doorbell chimed, and our butler, Thomas, ushered in a woman I'd never seen before. She was in her late 40s, with sharp features and a tailored blazer that screamed authority. Her name was Claire, and she introduced herself as Daniel's business partner. My stomach twisted. Business partner? Daniel had never mentioned a partner, let alone a woman who carried herself like she owned the room. Claire's presence shifted the air. She sat across from Daniel, her eyes locked on him with an intensity that felt personal. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice clipped, "but we need to discuss the project." My parents exchanged glances, and I felt a flush of embarrassment. What project? Why hadn't Daniel told me? He laughed, brushing off. "Claire, this can wait. Let's enjoy the evening." But she didn't budge. Instead, she pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table toward my father. "Richard, you're a man who values transparency," she said. "Take a look." My father adjusted his glasses and scrolled through the screen. His face paled. My mother leaned over, her gasp audible. I reached for the tablet, my hands trembling. It was a contract signed by Daniel for a real estate development worth millions. The Rolls-Royce, the suit, the confidence seat was all tied to this. But the details made my heart stop. The project was funded by a loan, secured against my family's estate. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Daniel's smile faltered. "Emma, I can explain," he started, but Claire cut him off. "He didn't tell you, did he?" she said, her tone laced with pity. "Daniel's been playing a dangerous game. He used your family's name to secure the loan, promising investors your parents' property as collateral. He thought he could flip the project before anyone noticed." The room spun. My parents were silent, their faces a mix of shock and betrayal. Daniel reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You lied to me," I said, my voice breaking. "You used my family." He shook his head, his eyes pleading. "I did it for us, Emma, for our future. I was going to tell you everything once it was done." Claire stood, her voice cold. "The project's failing, Daniel. The investors are pulling out. You're in over your head." She turned to my parents. "I came to warn you. If this collapses, you could lose everything." My mother's hand flew to her mouth, and my father's jaw tightened. I felt like I was drowning, the man I loved unraveling before me. But then Daniel did something unexpected. He stood, his shoulders squared, and pulled a small notebook from his pocket. "I'm not done yet," he said, his voice steady. "Claire, you're right, I took a risk. But I've been working on a backup plan." He handed the notebook to my father. "These are letters of intent from new investors. I've been meeting with them for weeks. If I can close this deal, the loan will be paid off and your estate will be safe." My father flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. Claire scoffed. "You're bluffing," she said, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. I looked at Daniel, searching for the man I'd married. Was this another lie, or was he fighting for us? The silence stretched, heavy with uncertainty. Hours later, after Claire left and my parents retired to their study, Daniel and I sat alone on the porch. The Rolls-Royce gleamed in the moonlight, a symbol of his ambition and his deception. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. He took a deep breath, his voice soft. "I wanted to be enough for you, Emma. I wanted to prove I could give you the life you deserve. I thought I could fix it before you found out. I wanted to hate him, but I couldn't. His secret had shaken me, but his fight to make it right stirred something deeper. No more lies," I said, my voice firm. "If we're going to fix this, we do it together." He nodded, his hand finding mine. The next morning, my parents called us into the study. My father held Daniel's notebook, his face stern but softened. "These investors are real," he said. "If you can pull this off, Daniel will back you. But this is your last chance." My mother reached for my hand, her eyes warm for the first time that weekend. "He's flawed, Emma," she said, "but he loves you. That's worth something." Daniel's secret had stunned us silent, but it also laid bare his heart. He wasn't perfect, but he was mine. And as we drove away in that borrowed Rolls-Royce, I realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or flawless plans. It was about facing the truth together, no matter how messy it got.